Сайн байцгаана уу хүн төлөгчтэй. Өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Австралийн хөрөнгийн биржид бүртгүүлэлттэй Аспайр Mайнинг компани гүйцэтгэх захирал ноён Давид Пол оролцож байна.
Давид Антони Пол, Аспайр Mайнинг компани гүйцэтгэх захирал. Ноён Давид Антони Пол нь Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын Корнелл их сургуулийг бизнесийн удирдлагын магистрийн зэрэгтэй баруун Австралийн их сургуулийг тус төгссөн. Тэрээр Аспайр Mайнинг компани охин компани болох Монголын төмөр замын дэд бүтцийн консорциумын гүйцэтгэх захирлаар мөн ажиллаж байсан. Ноён Давид Антони Пол нь Австрали, Африк, Азийн орнуудад алт лид, цэсийн хөдөр зэрэг эрдэс баялагын салбарын бизнес хөгжил, маркетингийн салбарт ажиллаж байсан туршлагатай. Тэрээр корпорацийн нэгдэл, хөрөнгө босгох, үр барагдуулах зэрэг төслүүдэд мөн ажиллаж байсан.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, tell us about your mine in Mongolia. What is and where is it about? What is the reserve and what is the perspective? Please tell us.
Sure. Aspire, we've been operating in Mongolia for over 8 years now.
8 years.
8 years and invested probably the equivalent of over $70 million in making 2 discoveries, essentially. They're assets, they're new assets. One is the Avut coke and coal project in the far west of Hövsgөл, in Цэцэрлэг. That's a very large discovery. It's over 250 million tonnes in a reserve of quality coke and coal, and actually that reserve in a single deposit. That reserve is, I mean, it's very special. It's quite extraordinary, and it's actually the second largest in the country, actually, after TT, of course, which is a lot larger, but nevertheless, this is quite an important coal. It's used to blend to upgrade other coals in the coking process, so it goes into the steel making industry.
Okay, you said the time-wise when you have discovered and how much altogether you spend on that.
On Avut, we discovered it in 2010 and 11 and 12, so it took 2.5-3 years. We've drilled over 40 kilometres of drilling to confirm the size of it and the quality of it.
So total 20 kilometres drilled?
40
kilometres. 40 kilometres total length. Yes. Wow, quite much.
Yeah, it's a significant asset.
How much all total investment you made?
Investment over the time frame was around $50 million.
50
yeah.
million US dollars.
Correct.
I'm asking you because what does discovery means? Once you fund it, and then you make a reserve estimation. For that you drill a lot, and then at the end you put all together $50 million and you find out in the north of the country the second largest coke and coal in Mongolia.
Yes.
So congratulations first.
Okay. Yes.
And you are a listed company, right? And please tell us about the history of this listing, how, when you started, and what is the market acceptance of your project? Sure.
We're listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, and in Australia there is an acceptance of a number of smaller exploration development companies, which are able to raise money on that market for risky propositions like exploration. So when we started drilling and finding Avut, we didn't know the size of it. We certainly didn't know how much it would cost to develop it. But we did think structurally it could have been large. So we took the risk. And we took the risk because we had there's an exploration license, which said if you take that risk, do that work, and you find something that's economic, there was a process in place to then convert that exploration license to a mining license, which we did in late 2012. And of course, with a mining license, you then have the ability to then go and commercialise that investment. So in Australia, there's been a lot of capital raised for Mongolia and for risky exploration to find new assets. So these aren't assets which were, for instance, discovered by the Russians in previous decades. These are new assets, and the thing to remember The Mongolian resource system is actually very similar to how we operate in Australia. All resources are owned by the government. So all the people in Mongolia all own all the resources in the ground. But what we've been able to do is add to that knowledge of the country. So we've added to the endowment of the country.
You yourself discovered that project?
Yes, we did.
It was not because many other deposits were discovered also before by Russians or
Yes.
former socialist countries. Say now you discovered. My question is, David, all our coal is usually in the south of the country. There's a huge belt, and this area is in the northern part of the Mongolia. What made you to believe that there is possibly a coal?
There was the exploration licenses we acquired from a Mongolian syndicate who actually became my shareholders and are still my key shareholders to this day. So there was some indications in those initial 4 or 5 holes, which indicated that it was very interesting and also that it was potentially good quality coking coal. There's no point in looking for thermal coal in this part of the world. It has to be coking coal. And while you say is quite correct, it's a very different field to in the south, but it's actually very close to very large coking coal basins in Russia. And in actual fact, there is some connectivity between what we find in northern Mongolia and what's found in what they call the Elagast Basin in the Tuva Republic. And even a few hundred kilometres further north to something called the Kuzbass Basin, which is the largest coal basin in Russia. And is largely coking coal in both of those basins. And some of the characteristics of the coal are identical to what we have with the Vuk.
Well, before we go the connectivity of this big basin in the north, I'd like you also talked about the shareholders. Now you have, once you are listed in Australia, you have plenty of shareholders. Who are the structure of your shareholders today?
At the moment I have about 2,400 individual shareholders, of which we have a number of large shareholders. We have, my largest single shareholder is the Noble Group, which are an international trading house who are listed in Singapore. They have around 19% of the company. And then I've got a large Mongolian shareholder who now owns around 14% of the company. And
14%.
And I have my original existing Mongolian shareholders who own around about another 7 to 8%. So total Mongolian share ownership is in the order of around 22%.
So in your company, the largest shareholder is Mongolians?
As a group,
24%. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, another one is 20% in Singapore listed. The remaining is basically those who bought shares in Australia.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Now let's go to the second part of my conversation with you, which I was very interesting. That's the reason I invited you. During the economic forum a few days ago, there was a substantial statement about Northern Railways, which is to be made by, because it's railways, by the 3 government under the Belt and Road, right, initiative and the things. Tell us what's on that project. Where is the railway? How does it go? Who's investing? When is it to be completed?
Sure. With our Avut discovery, in order to develop it, we need access to rail. It's too big a deposit to have it to be solely relying on trucking long distances. So it needs rail. So it's something we've been working on since 2013, long time. We have a subsidiary which we call Northern Railways LLC. At the moment it's owned 80% by Aspайr and 20% by Noble. But and we've been contributed substantial amounts of capital on various studies, and we've received, by the way, just recently the feasibility study has been completed on it. So we have a very good idea of the cost and all the operating parameters around it.
Let's make clear for audience that your Avot project, we talk about this in Hövsgөл, Цэцэрлэг project, are far from railway anyway.
It is.
Plus the closest one is coming from Darkhang, then Erdenet, right?
Yes.
And how long it will take from Erdenet to your project, and then what's your future plan?
Sure. The rail distance is from, as confirmed in the feasibility studies, 547.7 kilometres. The capital cost is in US dollar equivalent of US $1.25 billion. It's a very, very large undertaking. But what we've been able to, I guess, participate in is the whole step road, one belt, one road, Eurasian economic grouping of improving trade between China, Russia, Europe, and Mongolia. So, because of where Avut is located, and because of how close it is to the Tuva Republic, their city of Kyzyl, and other export industries in that republic, we've been able to demonstrate that it's in their interests to connect their existing rail network.
That's why they recently, the delegation, the government delegation from Tuva, had a meeting with your group, and they have expressed interest, I understand, to continue that from Ovot to the northern, further to Kyzyl. From the Ovot to border, how long?
Yes, from Avut to the border is at Atsuri Sargantogoi is the border post. That's around 200 kilometres. 200
kilometres. And from there to this large coal deposit in Tuva, how far?
It's around 300 kilometres.
Okay.
So 500 kilometres.
Okay.
But that 500 kilometres then is the final piece once Avut to Erdnet's built.
But initially, the Northern Railways is now, it's going to be the part of the Mongolian railway grid.
It is.
As infrastructure is to be also the part of the construction of the corridor, right?
Yes, correct.
And you said 1.5 billion US dollar needed.
1.25.
1.25.
Yes.
And this one is from Erdenet to Ovot only.
Correct.
Okay. When is it done?
It's it requires environmental studies. It requires land access agreements and a number of other conditions precedent before funding can be drawn down. And actually the final analysis of who those people who fund will be, who those companies and investors will be. Aspire will be an investor, of course, but there will be others. Key part, once you can show that there's connectivity, this will be a very profitable, busy railway, and it makes the economics of it particularly attractive. And it doesn't rely on a coal mine, which is important. So if we can think that
not only on coal mine.
Not at all. Not at all. It becomes.
What is this other parameters of this railway other than coal? What will be the transport possibly?
The growth in European Chinese rail freight is exponential. Since the opening up of One Belt One Road rail corridors, most of which, by the way, at the moment bypasses Mongolia. The growth has been doubling every year. Wow. And I'm talking about container-based freight. So manufactured goods, not just commodities, and being moved. Because railway, while it's a little bit more expensive than sea freight, it's far faster and more direct in terms of being able to place it in end markets. So it's a very attractive. It's a long-term industry. Now, Mongolia will benefit from this because they're a transit corridor through which they will be paid fees for using railway, maintenance, rolling stock, all sorts of other sort of benefits will flow from there. And being connected to this rail corridor, Mongolia can directly participate as an exporter.
Or yes,
and or importer.
Yeah, and also transit,
Yes.
transport, because okay, this 250 million tons deposit. Okay, say they will go out a little bit different quality than the Tawantogla, but very close by quality. It will take another 10-20 years to complete. Or if we sell all the time, for Tawantogla, for example, this energy resource made on washing facilities, on power stations.
Yeah.
How about this sort of infrastructure? What will you do there?
Correct. Well, all of the coal that we'll produce will be washed to an international specification. So what that means is that the value of upgrading the coal will be captured in Mongolia, and Mongolian government will receive royalties based on that higher value, which is very important. And that also means the coal will have its own brand and benchmark. So we expect to sell a significant proportion of the coal outside of China. The Russian and Mongolian governments have recently negotiated, and I believe will be signed in the near term, a discounted freight rate for transit for Mongolian freight through the Russian rail system, and the discounts are such that it makes it very competitive.
How about in terms of power?
In terms of power, we haven't finalised how we would manage power at Ovooth at this point, but at the smaller deposit we have called nүүrsний, which is haven't really talked about that as yet, but that's a smaller deposit which doesn't need railway. It can access a road at this point. We're actually looking at an interesting combination of solar cells and diesel-fired generators, which would be a legacy power station we can leave to the government of the local community there as a long-term infrastructure investment. But of course, I think we might talk about employment, etc. But Ovooth in particular will be an employer of over 800 people, 800 skilled people.
So you will make power stations, railways, and there will be mining, production, and then the whole this transportation altogether. The whole project will involve 800 people.
The Ovooth mine alone is 800 people.
Oh, okay.
The railway system, at least as between Erdnet and Ovooth, will be another 600-700 people.
Wow.
And now that's in relation to maintenance, but also a rolling stock maintenance and operations. We'll be stationing a rolling stock maintenance workshop in a sensible place along the line, and then there'll be communications. So it's a large undertaking.
What will be the capacity of this railway?
Yeah, it's the initial design capacity for the $1.25 billion is around 16 million tonnes, but it's upgradable relatively cheaply from there. So once you build the base single line, you can improve capacity by building additional 1 kilometre long bypass loops. So it's a single line, so you've got to make way for coming down the other side.
Like the one existing in the country.
Exactly.
And what will be an issue if you bring that much to the existing Transit Mongolia railways?
Yeah.
Where will be problems, and how do you see that coming?
We're working with with working groups with UBTZ right now on their planning for increasing capacity to deal with other demands as well as the demands that would come from Northern Railways. So what's the benefit of Northern Railways being built here is that it provides a stepwise increase in demand for freight services that allows UBTZ to make a stepwise increase in capacity. So investments in capacity so that the main line goes from being 22, 23 million tonnes as it currently is now to 35 to 45.
35, almost 50-60% increase. You were talking about the, let's say, I know it is not that easy, in particular in Mongolia, to make railways and with this Russian-Mongolian two governments, ineffective management. Say everything goes ideally. When it is to be completed?
Ideally, it would be starting. It's possible to start this time next year, with a view that it would be built within 4 years from there.
For 4 years.
So 2023.
I mean, with the existing technology and your planning, you can complete within 4 years if things go ideally.
Exactly, and funding's in place.
Is it the time when you start to produce, or you will prepare by that time? How does it match? Is it matching with your production plan?
Yeah, well, obviously
it's open pit, by the way, right?
It is, yeah. Open pit with backfill.
I
so
see.
As you go along, so you break the open pit into, actually the Uvoot's so large.
Go deep, and then the whole pile you cover the whatever. Correct. You.
So there's 7. At the moment, the design has 7 panels. So
okay.
you basically mine 1/7 of the deposit, and then backfill where you mined previously as you go along.
Wow. Okay. So you make already clear deposit structure.
Yeah.
All of the
environmental management, landscaping. Correct. Yeah.
You have done it.
That's all in the conceptual plans.
Okay. Let's talk about this project in context of the Hövsgөл аймаг, local provinces.
Yep.
How do they see it? Are they happy, or it looks like it's the only large mine we are finding in the north?
Yes, and it is the only large mine found in the north. It's a new one found in the north. It's hard to I guess answer that question, because I think there's a vocal minority and a quiet majority. There's a real interest, obviously, in further economic development in the region. It does depend a lot on government transfers, and there is a non-existent, I'd have to say just about a non-existent resource industry there anyway. So the local community has not seen any benefits from resources development, because it really hasn't got any. Now, with our discoveries, and I should explain, the nүүrsний discovery, which is the first one, which we could be developing this time next year and be in production, is, it doesn't need railway, is a new discovery which we've made. We've drilled over
You're extending
3-4
this
years.
discovery, or use another one?
This is the other one. This is the nүүrsний. It's a small
How far is that from the Ovot?
It's 10-12 kilometres south of the town of Moron, and it's about 170 kilometres further east of Avut.
How big?
About 170 kilometres further east of Avut.
170, okay.
It's relatively small. It's very small. But it's still valuable. When I say small, it's got resources of around 13 million tonnes.
How? By the way, this railway, does it go through Moron?
It doesn't. The design at the moment doesn't go through Moron, but we do have ability to make connections.
How close it would be touching?
We design. We don't. I don't think it's useful to put a large capacity rail line going through the middle of a town. So at the moment we've got it designed. It's about 60 kilometres south of Moron at this point.
South.
Yeah.
60 kilometres. So, by the way, from Ovot to, from Erdenet to Murung it goes first. Then Murung to Ovot. And Murung to Ovot, how many kilometres around?
It's about 170 kilometres.
Okay, 170. So one almost third would be from Moron to the further far to the north. Recently, Hövsgөл аймаг people were not happy because the budget of South Gobi аймаг was incredibly several times, 100 times more than this Hövsgөл аймаг, because they have deposit. Hövsgөл has no deposit. We are poor, and plus we want to develop only for tourism. That was kind of statement on their side. But looks like with your mine, Hövsgөл will have finally more revenue, supposed to have more revenue.
We we're making it clear now, but whether it's nүүrsний or Avut, we will look to put a percentage of our revenue into a local development fund to be used directly for the local SUM and local.
Do you have any estimation?
Yes, we do. It's approximately 1% of our gross revenue. So that's the revenue we would get for selling this product at end customer. So be it at the sea, in Far East Russian ports, or in Tangshan, Tianjin in China.
Wow, what you're saying is, after everything completed, the coal reaches the final buyer at the any port. Then from all the revenue you make out of it, 1% goes to the city.
That's right.
To IMAG.
To the IMAG in a development fund.
Yeah.
To be allocated to projects of worth as determined by the local community.
Not talking about the local community employment.
This is in addition to.
Addition to.
This is in addition to. Yeah.
So it's a quite substantial impact on the local development.
I've seen the budgets, and it's it's tough. They don't have a lot of resources, so it would be a real stepwise change in what they'd be able to do.
Plus probably some certain social work you're going to do, like some major mines do.
Well, what we have to do here, I mean, this is the way we think of this, is nүүrsний is relatively small but valuable. But it's a great training ground. This is where we will walk before we run. Obviously develop a large asset like Avot will need to be running very hard. So, but we need particularly competent training to build capability from local people.
At the one close to Murong city, you will have this training facilities for employees.
Correct.
To work for mines, for even Avot and probably the railway maintenance, etc.
That's correct. That's correct. Whether we have that, there is a technical schools in Erdenet, and we'd like to extend the branch of that technical school in Erdenet and establish something in Moron as well. Now, I think the key, the best thing we can do is provide a lasting legacy of infrastructure, which is improve sustainability of the existing industries that are there, which are agriculture and tourism, and build capability so that you're not importing workers from other provinces coming in. Because Hövsgöl's very lucky, and they're very lucky because we've made these two discoveries, because Bulgan, Zavhan, they have nothing like this, and yet Hövsgöl has, and now and if there's no additional issuances of new licenses anywhere in the future, that's all they have. So it's a hell of an opportunity they have.
And also Erdenet will have opportunity because their transit capacity is increasing, more employment. First time Erdenet is becoming kind of second kind of source of reference rather than they just Erdenet. Now it is transition point of the another large line. And
I actually use Erdenet, actually, just to jump in there, as a possibility of how Moron could develop. Because Erdenet has a fantastic large copper deposit. It's been operating successfully for many decades. It has the rail connectivity because of the copper deposit. It has a well-developed mills and other industries have been built out around the fact that they have a rail connection that can deliver product efficiently to customers.
Murong in particular, the coal is coming from west through the Murong to Erdenet. So this is, I think, a good analogy you have made. David, just small questions about you. I mean, you are an American graduate from Cornell. Have been somehow very
Australian, but through Cornell, yes.
Yeah, Australian, but graduate from Cornell, famous university in the U.S. And now, tell us about your family, children.
I have 3 children. Growing up, a girl at 21, a boy of 18, and a younger boy at 15. So they take up a lot of time. So I'm a frequent visitor to Mongolia, but I do base myself in Perth in Australia. I'm a 30-year veteran of the resources industry, so I have a long background in hard rock mining, in actually in the lithium space, gold, and of late obviously coking coal and iron ore. And I just as an aside, I'm a director of a private company which owns in joint venture with Indigenous groups in Australia, an iron ore deposit which will be a mine next year, and the reason we're doing that is because we're providing for the first time direct Indigenous ownership in a mine in the Pilbara, which is the big iron ore capital of the world, really, and we're doing it in a way to build capacity and training in an academy, and there's a bit of an analogy here with Hövsgöl, in that unless you can build capacity and capability of the workforce locally, you won't benefit the local community. And that's probably one of the best lasting legacies you can have.
Is it hard to work in Mongolia? What is the main concern you always have in mind when you wake up early in the morning?
I hope that the rule of law continues to be followed. I guess I'm from a Western democracy where rule of law is everything, and that provides a level of predictability that you work within. You work within the rules, and of course that's what we do. But what I guess maybe some people's interpretations of rules are different to others. I don't know, but that's probably the one part which concerns me a bit. And also, I think I've got a terrific group of team here, and I'd like to see them, I guess, succeed, because they've been very loyal with me. Some of them going back for the full 8 years.
Well, great start. Good luck.
Thank you.
Rule of law, that's what we also ordinary Mongolians want to see, which makes the policy predictable. Good luck to you and to your team.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, Jacob.
Thank you, Dad. За хүн төлөвчтэй өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Аспайр Maining гэж компани одоо энэ хойно төмөр зам тавих гэж байгаа. За Хөвсгөл аймагт томоохон нүүрсний 5 толгойн дараа орох орд газар олсон. Энэ компаниг гүйцэтгэх захирал ноён Давид Пол оролцлоо. Баярлалаа.